Hello, this is Actordal, and today we're going to be talking about how you can deal with Largo using the power of revives. Having to use revives is usually a sign that something's going wrong, but for Largo, we can make them part of the plan. Full disclosure before we get started so you know what you're getting into, this is a strategy targeted toward people who are trying to clear Largo for the first time. In other words, I wouldn't recommend this for farming. It can take a long time, and every run with the strategy is going to be a little bit different, so you can't really go on autopilot. As for the accessibility of the strategy, no A2s, A3s, or A4s are needed. I happen to have Cyrus at A2, so he does have increased damage output from his A1, but the original strategy that this was based on was done using all A0 units. I haven't fully crunched the numbers, but I feel pretty confident that my variation should be doable with A0s as well. The damage requirement is that your team can do at least 45% of Largo's HP in one break plus an extra turn, which is roughly 540,000 damage. Also, if you prefer written content, I have a write-up of the strategy on a publicly viewable Notion page, so I'll link that in the description. That includes a lot of the general information that I'll be talking about in this video, as well as a table showing the turn-by-turn actions for each character. For this video, I'll go over the team composition, walk through the general strategy, and then show a video of one of my full Largo runs. If that all sounds good to you, let's dive in. I based my team on a video by Empyrean Sky, who did an adaptation of a strategy by a player on the JP side who goes by Coheee. Their channels and those runs will be linked in the description. Their runs center around Ophilia-Cardona for surviving critical moments like Largo's strong magic nukes. Cardona has a skill that allows her to provoke an enemy toward an ally, so when Largo uses these nukes, she can direct him to attack Ophilia, who is then able to block elemental attacks with her Veil of Atonement skill. Cardona is also able to tank strong physical attacks herself, taking the heat off the rest of the party. For this strategy, we're going to use Alfyn in place of Cardona. Rather than trying to tank any of Largo's big hits, we'll take advantage of Alfyn's Vivify skill and Ophilia's Preservation to recover from those big attacks instead. In addition to Preservation, Ophilia is equipped with Healing Protection and Medica. She'll serve as our primary burst healer, so it's important that her speed makes her go between Largo and the slower adds in waves 1 and 3. With the Chomper vest that I gave her, my Ophilia's speed is at 344 and falls within that range, although I didn't actually do any testing to see what exactly the range is. For accessories, I gave her the Ebony Dragon Scarf for SP and SP regen, as well as the Energy Belt 3 for additional HP and SP, as she will be using a ton of SP in this fight. My Ophilia has her level 10 ultimate, which theoretically can be helpful to give an extra revive, but you most likely won't have to use it. I also have her at A1, but that's completely unnecessary for this fight. Moving on to Alfyn, he's equipped with his Revive skill, of course, along with Fourfold Icicle for ice breaking and Fire and Ice Restoration for regen. If you have him at A2, Pomegranate Panacea is another great choice for a skill to bring. As for equipment, there's a particular part of this fight where he needs to break an ad before Cyrus attacks. To accomplish that, I gave him a King Chomper vest and a Magical Speed Belt. Next up is Lynette, who will be critical in boosting the team's damage output. I brought along both her single target and front row attack buffing skills, as well as Bemusing Strut, which will be used to debuff Largo's elemental defense. You don't need Lynette's level 10 ultimate for this strategy, but you should try to get her ult as high as you can to maximize the buffs. For my runs, I had her ult at level 9. With regards to equipment, the Brave Fan is crucial for extending the duration of her buffs. This is an ice team, so Cyrus will be one of our primary DPSs. If you only have 3 skill slots, bring Glaucius Cloudere, Icewind, and Focus. For anyone who has him at A2 or higher, you can bring Tonitrus Canary as well, because there's a part of the fight where he can help to shield shave an ad that's weak to lightning. That's not necessary though, as that ad is also weak to daggers and swords, which can be covered by Azlight, Therian, and Eliza. For ultimates, I haven't upgraded my chain spell from level 1, but you can if you want to for a bit of extra damage. I stack damage and attack boosting equipment on him, but if you don't have his Glaucius Cloudere SP Saver, it might be a good idea to bring SP Regen instead. Finally, having him at A1 definitely helps, but I think this should be doable with all A0s provided that RNG is good to you about how much damage you do. Sophia is our other primary ice DPS, so she'll bring Raging Icewind and Glaucius Cloudere plus Elemental Break for E-defense debuffing. I recommend getting her ultimate to as high of a level as possible to increase her damage output. For accessories, I focused on attack boosting ones for her as well, and keep in mind that she won't benefit from ice damage up gear because her passive already hits the 30% cap. I also gave her a King Chomper vest to make her faster than Alfyn. At 312 speed, she's still slower than Largo, so that allows her to safely swap into the front line after him, and then get hit by Alfyn's regen. Next we have Azlight, who's an amazing addition to ice teams. Not only does her ultimate debuff Ice Res, but her passive inflicts Ice Res down as well when she breaks an enemy. For this strategy, her level 10 ultimate is required because we'll need to use it twice. I'd also recommend getting her to A3 for survivability, and for skills, bringing her Ice Res debuff, 1-hit Ice, 2-hit Dagger, and 3-hit Ice offers her a lot of options to help us get her shield shaving count right. I rarely opt to use her 1-hit Ice over, say, Cyrus's Ice Wind, but it's always nice to have that extra flexibility. Despite this being an ice-focused team, we're also going to recruit Therian's help for shield shaving and nuking, so we'll bring Hellfire and Triple Bite plus Restrain Foe to debuff Largo. I have his ultimate at level 9 for extra damage, but you may not need it depending on how much damage the rest of your team does. Accessories-wise, I stacked dagger damage for him. For those of you who pulled on Nier, you can replace Therian with A2 if you like, but you'll have to make adjustments to a few sections of the strategy to make sure your shield shaving is on track. Last but not least, Eliza will act as an E-attack buffing backpack for Cyrus, as well as a burst healer. She also uses swords to shave shields and do damage against one of Largo's adds. Because of that, I gave her sword damage up accessories, though they probably aren't necessary. This is a 2-break clear, but I like to think of the strategy in 4 parts. Part 1, the first break. Part 2, dealing with Wave 3 adds. Part 3, the stalling turns. And Part 4, the second break. Parts 1, 2, and 4 are mostly scripted. With the exception of a few relatively low probability events during those sections, you can pretty much do the exact same thing every time. In fact, I wrote down the exact moves and boost amounts that I used during those sections on the written Notion guide that I mentioned before, which again will be linked in the description. Part 3 is the section with the majority of the RNG for this run because Largo will use his magic nuke every 5 turns, and without someone who can provoke, we have no way of controlling who he hits. That's where Ophilia and Alfyn will come in clutch with their revives, and I've thought through a couple of ways to limit the number of potential problems we might face, but more on that when we get there. The first break is fairly straightforward. Between Therian, Cyrus, and Alfyn, with support from Azlight, we'll break and defeat both of the Wave 1 adds by the end of turn 3. After that, we spend a few turns shaving down Largo's shields, debuffing him, and buffing our DPSs. Azlight will then initiate the break with her ultimate, which further debuffs Largo's Ice Res, and the nuking from our first break should bring Largo's HP down below 65%. In the turn following the first break, Largo will summon his Wave 2 adds, but since he's below 65%, he'll overkill them at the end of the turn, replacing them with the Wave 3 adds instead. Because of that, we can safely ignore the Wave 2 adds and utilize the turn to set up regen/debuff Largo. Once the Wave 3 adds are out, we'll have Alfyn, Lynette, and Cyrus direct their focus to the top add and get rid of it as quickly as possible. Once that one is down, we'll start to shave down the bottom add, which is weak to both dagger and sword. During this section, while Largo is between 45 and 65% of his HP, he'll use his magic nuke every 5 turns. Ophilia has a passive that allows her to auto-revive after a lethal attack 1 time, and Alfyn's passive allows him to survive an otherwise lethal attack with 1 HP 1 time, so if this attack hits either of them, we can proceed as planned. If it hits either Therian or Eliza, who will both be in front that turn after attacking the bottom add, Alfyn will just need to revive them in the next turn, and it shouldn't be too hard to make small adjustments to get the bottom add to the right amount of shields at the right time. After that, getting rid of the bottom add will be fairly straightforward, and then Largo will have our full attention. This brings us to part 3, which I like to call the stalling turns. In the Ophilia-Cardona strategy that I base my runs on, Cardona would have directed Largo's magic nuke to Ophilia and triggered Ophilia's auto-revive. Then, as long as the team had a high enough damage output to chip away the rest of Largo's HP, everyone would be ready to move on to the last part of the strategy, where the team applies tons of buffs and debuffs before going into the second break. Without Cardona, however, it's up to chance who Largo hits. We need our characters to have enough BP and ultimate charges to execute part 4 of the strategy, but if they get KO'd, their BP count and ultimate gauge get reset to 0. That's why we might have to stall until all of our party members regain their BP and ultimate charges. Since my initial clear, I've rewritten the strategy so it's a bit less likely, albeit not impossible, for someone to get KO'd before the stalling turns. Another reason you might need to stall though is if Largo's HP is too high for your team to defeat him in one more break. To fix that, you can take these turns to whittle down his HP closer to 45%. During this phase, Largo has a 5-turn attack pattern. He starts with a 2-hit AoE spear attack, followed by a 1-hit single target spear that can poison the target. Next, he uses a fire AoE move, and then a hard-hitting single target spear attack, and finally, his magic nuke. Knowing this will allow you to plan your moves accordingly so that you can heal at the right times to prevent anyone from dying. In my written guide, I have a suggested 5-turn pattern that you can follow that handles most RNG problems. However, it's possible that something will come up and you honestly might just have to improvise a bit for this phase. There are 3 key things to think about during this section. 1. Don't push Largo below 45% HP, or else he'll summon his last wave of adds. 2. Don't shave Largo's shields down under 4. We need to use Raging Ice Wind on him one more time toward the end before we break him, so make sure you save at least 4 shields for that. The third thing to think about during this phase is how you deal with Largo's magic nukes, because there's nothing you can do to avoid that attack KOing somebody. During the turns where Largo uses his nuke, I put Ophilia, Alfyn, Lynette, and Eliza out front. Lynette is the only one of these characters who needs to have a certain amount of BP and ultimate charge to start the last section. Since her ultimate has a high refill rate, she can recover all of the BP she needs to max out her ultimate gauge within one of Largo's 5-turn cycles, whereas the other characters need more than 5 turns to regain and use enough BP to fill their ultimate gauge adequately. It takes 4 turns to set up all of the planned buffs and debuffs before you break, so I recommend starting the final section on the turn right after Largo uses his magic nuke to avoid someone critical getting KO'd in the middle of prepping for the break. That means that Lynette is the only character with a BP/ultimate gauge requirement who only needs to survive 1 additional nuke instead of 2 or more. On the nuking turn, Ophilia should use Preservation since we're certain that somebody will get KO'd. Due to how I've planned the turn order for the final section, my order of priority for who I cast Preservation on is Alfyn, then Lynette, then Ophilia, then Eliza. I also have Alfyn refresh regen, Lynette use Bemusing Strut to debuff E defense, and Eliza use Elemental Ruin to debuff E attack. When Largo's HP is low enough that you're confident you can finish him off, and your entire team's BP and ultimate gauges are ready to go, you can proceed to Part 4 after Largo's magic nuke, as long as it doesn't hit Lynette. Part 4 is also scripted, minus whatever adjustments you might have to make based on who got KO'd by Largo's latest magic nuke. Positioning certain characters is important during this section to make sure that all the DPSs get hit with as many buffs as we can get them. If done right, these are all the buffs that we anticipate having on our DPSs, as well as the debuffs we plan to put on Largo during the second break. I'll show the exact steps you need to take to get all these buffs in the run of Largo that will come later in this video, and it's also listed out in the written guide. Once you've applied your buffs and debuffs, unleash your max boosted attacks and your ultimates to hit Largo with everything you've got. After the final break, your team might need 1 more turn to deplete the rest of Largo's HP, which is fine because he won't attack that turn. You just need to make sure you can put out the numbers to do so, or else he'll summon his Wave 4 ads and it's game over. That was a lot of words that I just threw at you, so I'm going to show a full run of Largo now, which includes some commentary that I made during the run to explain certain parts in more detail. Here's a quick look at the team that I'm using for this run. Okie doke. We're gonna do another run of Largo, and the strategy I'm about to demo, if you can call it that, is not 100% consistent, but as you can see, this is a rematch, so it's close enough that I'm willing to do this fight multiple times. Alrighty, let's get it done. So the first 19 or so turns are gonna be pretty scripted. I'm starting off with some heals, and then we're gonna try to break these ads as quickly as possible. When I say that these first couple turns are scripted, I mean I literally have a document with the turn-by-turn play in front of me right now, and I'm following off of that. Alrighty, so far so good. So we're going to switch Ophilia over to Medica, and Alfyn is also going to help us break. Sweet, so we should be able to finish off those ads this round. Oh yeah, and I had Sophia switch in for Elemental Break, mostly to let Ophilia recover a little bit of SP. Okay, that is all good. Now let's do a bit of shield shaving while Largo is out in the open. Right, so for this first one, we should be fine unless the attack, it's 3 separate little fireballs, and unless they all hit the same unit and it's a frail unit, we should be good, so I'm not going to worry too much about this one. I've never had a problem with this for all the runs that I've done so far, but if it did happen, I would probably just reset because it's so early in the run. Okay, so now we're just going to shave him down a little bit more and get ready to break him soon. And we're also going to use Bemusing Strut to debuff Largo's E defense a little bit, also in preparation for the nuke. Alright, have Lynette buff Sophia now that she's out front. And debuff Largo's ice as well. And Cyrus will buff himself. Right now, Largo should have 30% ice res down and 30% E defense down from the various debuffs we've been applying from active skills at least. Alright, and we're ready to nuke now. So Azlight is going to break with her ultimate, and then we'll have Sophia and Cyrus do some damage, and Lynette's just going to buff everybody. As for Azlight, her ultimate has some ice res down effects, and she also has a passive that inflicts ice res down when she breaks an enemy, which we're taking advantage of for our nuking turns. Okay, so we can have Therian swap in front, and that way he'll trigger Lynette's passive, which will give everybody another 10% boost on their attack. Oh, that is a beautiful number, thank you, Cyrus. Alright, so we know his next move is going to be a 2-hit spear party AoE, which is why we're going to have Ophilia heal everybody back up after that. And then other than that, we're just going to break him a little bit. Yeah, there it is. Oh yeah, I guess I forgot to mention, he operates on a 5-turn cycle, and from this point forward it goes 2-hit AoE spear, single target spear with poison, AoE fire, a different single target spear, and then his magic nuke. Okay, so these are the wave 2 adds, but for this strategy we're skipping over them altogether, so for this round we don't need to pay attention to them. Largo is going to overkill them and summon the wave 3 adds at the end of this turn anyway. This is a good time to get your heals in and also debuff Largo. Yeah, so there's the poison spear. Yep, there they go. And this round we're going to focus on the top ad first. So Alfyn will help us break there, and Cyrus will also help us break Lynette as well. Ophilia's heal is going to be critical for us surviving this round too. It's really important that her speed goes between Largo and the second ad for this section. Okay, so more breaking on this top ad. I purposely made Alfyn faster than Cyrus, specifically for this ad, so Alfyn can break and Cyrus can nuke. Okay, I've never had Largo and the bottom ad hit the same person in this turn. It looks like if they did, that person would die, but because it's never been a problem, I didn't bother to change the instructions for this turn. I think there's probably some RNG there. But anyway, Largo's going to nuke this turn, and there's a 100% chance that someone will either die or be forced to use a special personal ability to either not die or undie. And we're just gonna take the L and figure out how to adjust after that. And don't worry, this is actually part of the plan. Okay, so conveniently it hit Alfyn, who doesn't die because of his passive. If it had hit Therian or Eliza, we would have had to just pick them up in the next turn and then deviate from the written plan a little bit to make sure that bottom ad is down to 1 shield at the right time. He's at 4 shields right now, which doesn't really matter, he just needs to be at 1 shield by the end of turn 16. which is this turn. And to do that, we're just gonna have Therian use triple bite one more time. Okay, so Aslight will do the breaking for this round because Therian's out of SP, which means we're just gonna have Lynette come up. And Eliza will also max boost Elemental Ruin just to do as much damage as she can. I actually gave her some Sword Up damage accessories just because this is the only time in the run where we actually need her to do any damage. Okay, so I'm going to have Sophia use Raging Ice Wind here because it looks like Therian should be able to finish off that Sentinel. If it looks like he's going to come up short on damage, Sophia can use Glaucius Claudere instead and target Largo specifically. Oops. Oh. Okay. So yeah, that's an RNG moment. He doesn't usually do over 3,300 damage on that. So that's a little unfortunate because that means we're forced to do some stalling in the next couple turns. I would have to for my party anyway because we don't do enough damage not to, but this means we have to wait for Aslight to come back up and get all her BP, which sucks, but that's okay. It would suck if my party did more damage and we could have otherwise just moved on and finished the fight, but we can't anyway, so it's not a big deal. I have E-attack gear on Aslight, but you could probably use HP instead just to avoid stuff like that. Oh yeah, and we did preservation on Alfyn because he is okay. Well, not because we could read the future. It was because we really need Alfyn for this strategy, and it's super inconvenient if he goes down. So we prioritize him for all the preservations. Anyway, we are in what I like to call the stalling turns, which means that I'm basically just going to do more shield shaving and damaging to Largo. We're trying to get him as close to 45% as possible without going over. I usually use the right side of the... Sorry, I'm trying to think and talk at the same time. My brain is buffering. Usually use the right side of the bow weakness box to measure where 45% would be. So just try not to dip below there. And an important thing for us here is that we don't want Largo to go under 4 shields until we're ready to apply all the buffs and whatnot. So yeah, we have Sophia and Cyrus shave 4 more shields and do a decent chunk of damage while we're at it. And I do generally have like a 5-turn plan for how I like to do these stalling turns, but because Aslight went down and we had some SP problems also, I'm just winging it for this turn, or for this cycle. This is definitely the hardest part of the fight because you can't just turn off your brain cells, you actually have to react to things and make decisions on the spot. I did try to come up with a plan that you can use during this part, but this run is a good example of how things just go wrong sometimes and you gotta roll with it. Alright, I forgot what turn we're on. It's 23 and I think he nukes on 24, so this should be the single hit spear, which hopefully won't take anyone out this time. And yeah, we should probably move Lynette in the back then since she's not full on HP. Well, it's a good thing we did that. I think looks like that would have hit Lynette if we hadn't. Okay, so he's gonna jag us again with his nuke. So we'll just try to figure it out, where I'm gonna have to do another cycle of stalling just because I kind of messed this one up because of SP and other things that came up. And just for a quick explanation, we have these 4 in the front because Lynette is the only one of the 4 who needs to have a certain amount of BP to be able to go into the last nuke phase, and everybody else can safely lose their BP, and it's fine. I think Largo's caught on that I'm counting on Alfyn's revives for this strategy. Okay. Let's see. Still having some SP problems, so we'll figure it out. It's fine. Just want to make sure we have some heals up on people where we need them. Yeah. Yeah, I guess we can do this. We can chip him down 4 more, and then after that we will not be allowed to hit his weaknesses again until we move on into the final phase of the strategy. Okay. Now he's very close. Actually, is that too close to 45? I'm a little worried. Well, hopefully it'll be okay. I think we can probably. I mean, we can't hit him with his weaknesses again until the last phase anyway. So these light hits, not light elemental, like they'll be gentle coming from Sophia and Lynette with physical stuff. These should be fine. For the record, I'm still not like on the written stalling cycles that I want. Like I had a plan written down and everything. I'm not following those yet, so that's why I have to think so much. Let's see. Okay. It's probably fine. Okay, another nuke. So we got a cast preservation in Alfyn again. And I'm kind of inclined to go through another stalling cycle. Everyone's BP looks good, but I didn't apply all the healing buffs and whatnot that I want to have before we do that final phase. So yeah, let's see what happens. This child does not like Alfyn. Okay. Alright. So Alfyn still doesn't have enough SP, but I think we can just figure something out, yeah. So to do that instead of... Okay, Eliza also doesn't have enough SP for the thing that I want her to do, but let's just try to be on that stalling cycle. I don't want to do this another time. I'm also like running out of revives. Okay, turn S2, let's see. Need Aslight in front so she gets hit by Medica. Oh yeah, to explain that, I want her to get hit by Medica twice so that it'll last 6 turns, because there's 1 turn in a couple of turns. That was a bad description. But in a couple of turns, there is a place where Aslight might be in danger, so having Medica will generally prevent bad things from happening there. So that she doesn't get downed when we're in that final phase, because that'd be tough. Yeah, so we need her in front for this next one, and 1 more Medica from Ophilia. And let's see, what we do with Lynette and Therian, or Cyrus and Eliza in these turns is pretty flexible, so just making stuff up as we go. Okay. So it's this turn, and then he's gonna nuke again, so do you want Sophia out front? And yeah, Cyrus also needs to stay out front here so he can get hit by regen from Alfyn, which is also to stave off some potential RNG issues in the last phase of the fight. Well, if he didn't already have regen, but he does for this run at least. Okay, so as long as he doesn't nuke Lynette this turn, we should be good to go and finish the fight. His HP is low, everyone's BP is where I need it to be, so just don't hit Lynette, and we're good. We can make everything else work. Alright, so not Lynette, and also not Alfyn this time. We do need to pick Sophia back up, not Sophia, Eliza back up, because her passive is used to buff Cyrus, but it only works at max HP, and I'm pretty sure... Okay, so Alfyn does not have enough SP for Vivify, we'll do that in 2 turns. But Eliza's passive only works at max HP, and I'm pretty sure being dead does not qualify as max HP. Yeah, this last phase of the fight is mostly scripted too, you know, with a couple of exceptions of like figuring out who needs to be revived, etc., but we should be in the clear as long as... I'm not gonna say that because something could go wrong, but let's get all of our DPSs out front, our ice DPSs, and Lynette will boost or buff Sophia this turn, because Cyrus can buff himself. And all the ice DPSs are out front, so next turn Lynette can use her frontline buff and they'll all get hit by that. Oh yeah, and we also used Raging Ice Wind with Sophia on the last turn. That's what we were saving those force shields for, why we didn't want to bring Largo below force shields, because Sophia and Azlight together can cap Largo's Ice Res debuff. And this turn, Alfyn's gonna revive Eliza so that we can get her passive buff again, and Lynette will boost all of the ice DPSs. Okay, we're gonna move the ice DPSs back out front, because next round, we're gonna break and all that good stuff, so we want them to get hit by Lynette's ultimate. But we are going to switch Therian in front because of Lynette's passive, which gives, you know, the 10% boost every time we switch. We want to make sure we have that for the nuking as well. So yeah, Largo's not going to get to nuke us this time, because we're going to get him first. Okay, I'll do commentary in a second because I want to make sure I don't mess this up. We're in the home stretch. Yeah, okay, so Lynette's gonna use her ultimate to buff everybody, because that's what she does. That's what she does best. I think we already talked about Azlight's ultimate, so yeah, we're just gonna have her break again. Sophia and Cyrus's jobs for the next couple turns is just gonna be to hit as hard as they can. We're using the 3 hit here instead of the 1 hit because he would break damage cap by quite a bit with the 1 hit, so we just want to make sure we're maximizing damage there instead of capping out at 99,999. Okay, yeah, so this is just another turn of nuking. I think it's probably self-explanatory. The one note I guess I'll add is that we're using Chain Spell even though that only hits his weakness 1 time, because we want Cyrus to recover BP for the next round, next turn. Okay, yeah, that looks like a very manageable amount of HP, so one more time, we're gonna hit as hard as we can. Okay, yeah, we're looking really good. Woo! Alright! And that's Largo! That's it from me for now, so if you made it all the way here, thanks for watching. Bye-bye!